All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World Podcast. My name is Michael Faree, your host today. Just wanted to welcome you guys all to the show. I'm really excited. We've got DJ Swanepoel from Untitled that's going to be joining us. He's the CEO and founder of that company that focuses on web push notifications, which, as you all probably have experienced, is sort of a new way to communicate with your prospects, your website visitors, and those that opt in to receive those notifications. Really, really cool stuff. So I wanted to learn more about it. So wanted to bring DJ on to talk a little bit about how he founded the company and certainly all about web push. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. Don't forget, we've got Lead Generation World Orlando coming up in a couple months. It's going to be January 17th through the 19th in Orlando in person. We've got fully guaranteed registration. So if for any reason you sign up today and you decide you cannot make it, we'll refund your money. So nothing to worry about there. So go ahead and register. We're really, really excited about the ability to put on a safe in-person conference for those that feel comfortable traveling. For those that don't, we totally understand. We all have different risk tolerances and we all have to make our own decisions, but we are excited to put on Lead Generation World in Orlando in person. It won't become a virtual conference, so your ticket is guaranteed. So hopefully we'll see you there. We do have some booths still available if you're looking at exhibiting. As you know, Lead Generation World always makes the exhibit hall the focus of the show. And so we're excited to have the companies exhibiting at the conference as well. And if you want to be one of those companies, make sure to go to leadgenerationworld.com and check out the sponsorship page and fill out that form. And we'll get you all the information you need to become an exhibitor. Otherwise, let's go ahead and bring DJ into the podcast and start talking a little shop. All right. Welcome to the Lead Generation World Podcast. My name's Mike. I've got DJ Swanepoel with me here from Untitled. DJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting a little bit about the world about push.
Yeah, totally. I want to get into all that, and because it's really interesting to me. I mean, I think everyone's seen web push become more and more frequent place. When navigating online and different websites and seeing it. Also, I definitely want to dig into it and hear sort of what you guys are up to and what sort of the best practices are and all that good stuff. But I do want to get a little bit of get to know you a little bit more. I mean, I'm always intrigued by founders and how they come about, sort of that pathway to founding a company and how they sort of got there. So, tell me a little bit. Obviously, you're in Southern California. You went to Cal State Fullerton, which is actually not far from where I grew up in West Covina. And back then, they still do have a really great baseball team. But so you went to Cal State Fullerton, came out of school, got into the marketing field. Tell me a little bit about that and how those first few years out of college.
Yeah. So actually, I was working for some family businesses for a while, jumping around, looking for something. And then I ended up kind of bailing out of the family aspect of it because they were in real estate consulting and it just wasn't for me. I love real estate, but I just didn't find a passion in that. And I knew I had a passion more around tech and SaaS companies and that kind of whole world. So I found a local company here, which was a mobile app development shop. And they did mobile apps for Hyundai, Taco Bell, Experian, Kaiser Permanente. I mean, a lot of big hitters, as well as some internal applications. And I joined there on the marketing team, became the marketing director in that company there. And that was really my world for a while, was using mobile apps and trying to focus on two things. We're talking about like user acquisition and boosting our KPIs, our MAUs, our DAUs, all that kind of stuff. And when I was there, it was interesting because no matter what I tried as a marketer, I mean, we did the email, SMS, whatever you're talking about. One of the things that always worked very well in the mobile app space at the time was push notifications. That was regardless if we did it for one app to drive them back, or we even tried some kind of cross promotion on there. That was the most cost-effective way to really, get people back to the app and boost up our KPIs. So it was when I was there, I started kind of working and using these different tools that we had at our disposal. And that's where I kind of started to see the fruits of what would soon become Aimtel and that side of it.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about. I'm intrigued by the mobile app, aspect, because obviously, mobile apps are massive and huge. And what were sort of the things that you guys were working on? Were you guys developing? Were you a third party developer? Was a company, or were you guys developing your own app?
So we did both. So we did a bunch of like contract work. So we had people which would approach us and we'd build up, scope it out. And I was actually on the marketing team there. So there were times that we even did the promotions behind the apps and all that stuff. And beyond that, we had some internal applications which on the side the team would do. And I wasn't one of the founders or anything in here, just on the marketing team. But
Yeah.
then they got the founders got some funding for basically a live streaming video application. That was like their big hit they tried to go for. So this was, I don't know if you remember back in the day, like the Meerkats. This is way before even Facebook Live and all the different live platforms came out. They had built one called Hang With, and then we kind of took half the team and said, "Hey, let's put the resources on this and try to make this our own in-house app. Let's try to make it a heavy hitter." And
Yeah.
build that out and flush that out and see how we can kind of go with that one.
But that was a little bit before the time, right? Now, I mean, if timing wise, now with everybody doing, Zoom and all these different Hangouts and Google Hangouts and all this sort of stuff, that was probably what year was that? Do you remember? Was it
Oh gosh, that was about 7 or 8 years ago.
okay? Okay, so
So 2012, maybe around there,
yeah,
2013.
yeah. So that was, I guess, that was around the time, a lot of web, streaming, video apps, I guess, were sort of coming out and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Um,
definitely like the dawn of the time. Yeah. It was a little bit like you said before the time, because now with 5G rolling out, it's more appropriate now and it's more capable now.
yeah.
It was maybe even too ahead of its time.
Yeah. So, what is it like from an app? I mean, how hard is it to get an app to really, to promote an app and get that traction and get that sort of, over the hill and start going down with momentum and viral, going viral kind of sense where people start. You don't have to do as much advertising now; it's just get word of mouth. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
hitting a home run, but like,
Yeah.
how difficult is that? Has it ever happened, for you guys when
Oh,
promoting?
it was insanely hard to promote the apps. I mean, it's like there was the new gold rush at the time too. I guess it maybe still is here. Everybody was making a new app. It was rolling out constantly in there. I mean, trying to get the eyeballs on them. We of course had various strategies, and we were trying, like I said, the pushes, the emails, um, but it really was not easy. The easiest ways or the most possible ways was almost to kind of gamify the system at that point, and because you could you could buy downloads at the time,
Yeah.
which you could do either quality downloads or they could have been incentivized downloads for cheap. And those basically helped work towards the algorithms for ranking in the app stores. So if you got those downloads, they were effectively nothing, but then you'd boost yourself high enough to then start getting quality downloads, and then back out the kind of CPA process for what that would have been. And that was really the most um, way you could do it on demand out of all the ways. Everything else was a challenge.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, okay, so you go from this company, and was there something in between, founding Amtel or?
No, so when I was at that company, that other project, the live streaming one, I was basically heading up new creative ways to boost up our KPIs, and one of which was building a website property for it. Because again, it was an app, but we thought, what if we could have people tune in on the live streams on the website? Sound like a great idea.
Yep.
And I have a development background as well, so I basically spearheaded the whole project. And then we thought that was great, but the problem was, again, how do people know that you're streaming live at the time? The app, you get the push, but the website, we had nothing. So it's just basically if you're coincidentally on the website. And so I was searching and searching, and that's where I saw that basically the browser started getting together and they were going to release push for desktop, and non-app based versions of it too, just for the web. And it was basically Safari was one of the first ones, and Chrome was just on the cusp of they were going to release it. So I saw the opportunity and thought, wow, like this is the time if I wanted to try something, since it's that first to market kind of strategy.
Yep.
And I put my 2 weeks notice in there and started drinking a lot of coffee, locked myself in a room, and I started work on the earliest prototypes of what became the platform today.
So you mentioned you're a developer as well. So you did a lot of the early dev work on the product.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what gave me the edge to get this product to where it is today, and get it off the ground, because I had the marketer's mindset the entire time. I knew what marketers wanted, but at the same time, I knew how to program and I knew how to develop in there. I used to say like I'm a marketer by trade, developer by passion. So, I had gone to school and all that stuff, and I had practiced marketing for a long time, but always did the technical aspect of it. I was not afraid to roll up the sleeves and do the programming of it. So yeah, in the early days, I built out the entire platform, and even to this day, I still do programming on the Intel platform.
Yeah, that's great. When you can get in there and sort of, tinker and build the thing yourself. I mean, and instead of having to hire somebody to do it and all that sort of stuff, it's a real advantage. So you go from conception. Did you start working on building this product, at late night, when you get home from work and that sort of thing, or how?
Yeah, I tried that. I did that for a few months. I tried the nights and weekends thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people see great success with that. And there's a lot of success stories about just start it, just do it, and just do it. But I had some family members come to me and they're like, you've been doing this for a couple of months now. And what do you have to show for it? Not in an offensive way, but
Yeah.
if you do a couple hours a day, it's so slow. So that's when it was really at one point the decision to go cold turkey. If I was going to do this and I was going to do it right, and with that window of time kind of closing in, like I said, the browsers were releasing it. I mean, if I waited another year, then we would no longer be one of the first to market.
Yep.
When we basically came out the door with our initial beta versions, there was but two real competitors out in the space, and one that came from the mobile app space and is still in there today. So yeah, it had to go kind of full commitment to it in order to get it where we wanted it to go.
So did you have to, raise some money to be able to sort of float yourself for a couple? I mean, what was that strategy when you're starting? Okay, I've got something that's somewhat built, but what was that go to market and actually jumping off sort of the cliff into entrepreneurship like? And how did you plan that? What was the expectation there? Did you have a 6-month plan? I mean, was it day to day? And
Yeah, it was tough. I had pretty much a 6-month plan. So I had got some friends and family money, a very small amount, basically just to cover the roof over my family's head.
yep.
And my thought was that I was going to take 6 months. I was going to develop this platform. We were going to roll it out in January, the beginning of the new year, and it was going to be this giant overnight success. And we were going to see, millions of users flocking to it. And I could probably, exit in 2 months and go and retire in Kauai. But that isn't what happened. So I took the time, built the software, and I remember we got initial success in the beginning because I put it on some kind of like the Product Hunt equivalents, but there was Product Hunt, Beta List. There was some sites meant for beta platforms. And I remember distinctly putting it on there in early December when I started feeling like the product was basically ready to go. And then I went to a New Year's Eve party, not thinking anything of it, had a few drinks, and in the early morning, woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning with my phone just being blown up by emails. And I had no idea what was going on. Turns out that we had been featured that day on New Year's Day on one of the sites, and then had all this exposure for basically people signing up for what was still the beta version at the time. We
Yeah.
weren't even charging, but they were flooding to the platform and they were signing up. And I was frantically running home, half hungover, trying to figure out how to like keep everything afloat for this initial surge, so we can capitalize on it and really
Yeah.
use this as a catalyst to go somewhere.
Yeah. So is that sort of how you gained your sort of first clients, or, or how did that work?
Yeah, it's definitely where we got some of the first ones, but there was a lot of people I think which were just kind of interested at the novelty of the new technology. So
Hmm.
they jumped in, and one of the hardest things about our whole industry and the whole company has been the adoption and the understanding of the technology. There's some certain technical aspects, people, which it's gotten a lot easier now with our systems in place and all that's been done too, but it's not just like, hey, sign up on this and you're in a CMS and you're good to go type of running it. There's things you have to do, and that education process made it hard. So we did turn a bunch of those beta users into customers, but I mean, it was a slow, gradual but exponential growth from the early days when we got them through. Yeah.
So now you're running. Well, and I promise we're going to get into what web push and all that sort of stuff is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just with regards to the growth of the company, what was it? It was founded. This was 4 years ago.
Close to 5 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming up on
Yeah.
that sort of December, that New Year's Eve sort of
Yeah.
ending.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And how's the company grown since then? What do you get from it? How many employees do you have now, and how's that going?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy to see the growth. The one of the metrics I like to share is some of the actual platform growth on it too. I remember back in the day, being able to handle hundreds of thousands of pushes. If we did that in a month, that was impressive. That was a great number. When we started getting to a million or so, that was like, okay, we're getting traction in here. To date, now we've done 300 billion with a B push
Wow.
notifications. And we're doing a billion a month now. And I mean, the volume is just insane. as it's kind of running through the platform in there. We have over 20,000 sites. We've got still some small e-commerce sites, which was our initial target audience. And then we got Fortune 500 companies in there. We got, powerhouse logos that are household names that are using the platform on the daily. So it's been a huge, huge growth since the early days in there.
That's awesome. And much of our audience knows Push Pros versus Aimtel. Tell me a little bit about the relationship there and what the difference is, if anything.
Yeah. So a long while ago, when Aimtel was kind of rolling, the Push Pro team was completely separate. They were kind of kicking off, and they were doing the more monetized aspect of Push. So Aimtel, we're the SaaS model, the self-serve one. You go in, you use it, you send the pushes when you want to send it. And a lot of the times it's, people that are just trying to promote a product or re-engage their visitors in some kind of capacity, much like an email aspect of it. And the Push Pro ones, they were more against the fully managed solution. So people that had properties, websites, and they wanted to find another way to monetize the traffic that's going to their site. Mm-hmm. And we developed this relationship between the two companies so that we could help one another. Aimtel can help on the technical aspect of how everything works, because delivering 1 billion pushes per month is not an easy feat to do and requires a whole team behind it. But also knowing the kind of monetization world of it too, you have to have an understanding of that industry. And that's not something I was completely focused on in the initial days of when Aimtel was kind of going about. So they kind of came hand in hand in there. And then our relationship just grew and grew. And towards, I think it's been maybe 1.5 years now, the founder there of Push Pros, he bought a large equity stake into Aimtel in the company itself. And ever since then, we kind of just gelled more and more. We work hand in hand. If there's people that are looking to kind of do a monetized side of it or fully managed, they go to the Push Pro side of it. If they're looking more self-serve side of it, they come to the Aimtel side.
Got it. Okay, so let's dig in. Okay, we know a web push. I mean, maybe some people don't. Okay, let's pretend they don't. But everyone's seen the going to a website these days, and they see, do you want to allow for notifications or not?
Yeah.
Take me from there on what sort of push web push is from that standpoint and moving forward.
Yeah. So, and for those that aren't completely sure of it too, it's basically like push notifications. Obviously, when your DoorDash arrives, that thing that pops up and says your delivery is about to come there. That used to be exclusively for mobile apps. That technology did not exist for the websites. 5-6 years ago, as the browsers got together, they made that underlying agreement. The push API spec is what they called it, to bridge this gap as part of what's called the progressive web app movement. They said, you know what? Apps, they're great, but what's the shortfall from an app to the website? What can the web not do that app can? And push notifications, amongst a few other things, was one of the leading ones. So yeah, that tech exists now. You come to the website, you get the prompt that says, hey, I want to show notifications. You hit allow. What then we as the provider, we handle the whole process on the technical aspect, because it's not as simple as like email. Email, you have an email address. I mean, with a couple lines of code, you can kind of send the email, you're all done and dandy with it. But the push subscription has a bunch of tech parts of it. It's then connected. We store the information for you. Aimtel then also tracks a whole bunch of data for you, because we're big believers in hyper-targeted marketing and personalization, especially when you're dealing at 2020, 2021 kind of standards of it. So we make it easy. We compile those subscribers for you, and then you can go into our platform and you can basically segment out who you want based upon site activity, whether they've purchased products, viewed sites, done certain activities, geolocations, and then send campaigns, whether in an automated fashion or just a single push out, which then is delivered to the desktop or phone, wherever they subscribe, regardless if they're on the site. So if you're on your phone, you could be, walking down the street and your phone can vibrate and you have a push from the site you subscribe to saying, hey, your Black Friday deals are now live. Come check it out. And, save some
that's
money.
interesting. I sort of had the assumption that it was isolated to whatever device or channel you would be on. So if I subscribe to it on this browser on my computer here, I would get the notifications here. But you're saying it's cross devices?
It is based upon what you subscribe on. So if you subscribe on your desktop, we have the ability to send to your desktop, not to your phone. Okay. If you subscribe on your phone, then we can send to your phone. We also, as a provider, have ways for you to kind of connect the dots. So especially companies that may have it's a user ID or an email or something to connect the two, then we have ways that say, hey, essentially send a push to all devices that, you own, and then deliver to them regardless of where they are.
Got it. Okay. So so let's talk about some like case studies. I mean, and how is it sort of really working from a beneficial standpoint in comparison to, I don't know, email or whatever it may be, right? Because right now is if there's a notification, you're sending out an email to somebody, that, and obviously open rates are likely going down. I don't know. That's a big assumption. I don't know, but my email rates, seem to, people, it goes, it just depends on getting into the inbox and all those sorts of things. But with a notification, it's right there in front of you. So tell me about what kind of companies or clients that you have, or how are they using it?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things you mentioned, which is the great part about Web Push, is when this technology came about, it was designed intentionally to overcome the shortfalls of email. So, email, like you mentioned, you got spam folders, push notifications, you don't have spam folders. Emails, if you put your email somewhere, it can essentially float around. Of course, we have a lot of compliance laws these days to prevent that, but your email can exist in the interwebs for, eternity, essentially. Push subscriptions work differently in the sense of you give permission, you have to give explicit permission to the site, and you can revoke it at any time for the site too. So it helps circumvent some of those issues with email first and foremost. And then the use cases are really a dime a dozen. Like I said, we have companies across all different industries and verticals. We've got the e-commerce ones, which of course use it for promotions, abandoned cart notifications. So it really works on all the different stages of the lifecycle funnel. I mean, if you're talking about top of funnel, people, whether it's e-com or even just regular lead gen, people come to the site, a certain percentage of people will bounce. They won't do what you want them to. They won't submit their emails. They won't buy an item, whatever it is. The barrier to entry for push subscription is a lot lower. It's one click. The barrier to entry for email, obviously, it's a whole bunch of more to it. So we tend to see around 20-25% opt-in rates on push subscriptions when people come to the sites and interact with the prompt. So top of funnel, one use case people do all the time is abandoned funnel kind of methodology where somebody comes to the site, you don't get an email, and then you send a push to drive them back to the site to capture the email. So now you have them in two different channels. Of course, push does not replace email. It's a complementary channel. It's another way for you to reach the people you want to reach. So we see that all the time. We see news sites, which we basically have dynamic RSS notifications. So, anytime that they're trying to update things that are happening in real time and live time, they simply specify a feed, and we grab the feed and we send these pushes to the people that are personalized to that audience, driving them back to the site. And we've had a lot of success with big companies doing that too. So I can keep rambling off. There's
Yeah,
so
no,
many different use cases.
yeah, no, but I think it's important to hear him, because it sparks ideas on how to use this, right? When, me being a blank slate, when I'm looking at push, even for lead generation world, hearing these ideas like, oh, okay, I could, obviously if someone goes to the reg page and doesn't complete, I can go back to them and have them come back or whatever. If prices go up, or if podcasts get posted, or
Yep.
whatever it is. So it's just kind of interesting to hear sort of different ideas. What are so along those lines of hearing ideas, is there something that you found a brand using, you go, oh, I didn't even really think about that, and they're using it to some level of success, or is it all relatively straightforward?
There's a lot of advanced techniques which they do. I wouldn't say necessarily any of them are ones that I hadn't thought about because I've been
Yeah.
in the space so long. When
Yeah.
somebody doesn't know what web push is, I'm still I feel like I've been breathing this thing for an eternity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of the times, and like you said, these ideas are what spur them on. So we give the recommendations. If somebody's idle on a page for too long, you could send a push to them because they may have gone to a different page. They could be, tabbing between other things or gone to a competitor's site to compare prices or whatnot. So there's a lot of clever ones. I think some of the more clever ones we saw recently, which we helped kind of offer or initiate the idea for a lot of users, is a 1-2 punch, because we do notifications when you want to schedule them, and we also do what's called triggered pushes. So something that happens off an event, and that really opens up the door, because an event is anything. And one such event that people do successfully are clicks. So you send a push out and you have it go, and let's just say it's a more content-oriented one about the lead gen speaker lineup or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then somebody that clicks that, then you say, all right, 20 minutes later, I'm going to send a follow-up push driving them to the reg page with a promo that's going through there. And then again, somebody that abandons that one, I'm going to do a follow-up push to that person to try and get them to follow the flow. So creating these sort of event-based drip campaigns, I think that's really where the unique customization comes about, and people can kind of get very clever with their strategies.
So there's character limitations, right, to these messages to some extent, or no?
Yeah. So one thing that's unique is that every browser kind of sets their own limitations on what they're going to show. That includes character limitations, things like action buttons. Like some browsers allow you to put additional buttons beneath your push. Other ones don't allow you to do that, or you have to click a show more type of thing. Some of them allow you large images. Some don't allow large images and only an icon. So each one has varying degrees of differences between them. And even in certain times, like if your phone is on the lock screen versus if you kind of like scroll down on it and show it. But that's part of what we do. We handle all those nuances for the people because that's, impossible for a regular person just kind of, adhere to all that too.
Yeah. And you mentioned that there's an opt-in rate of about 20%. So of web traffic, I'm guessing to a site, about 20% generally will opt in to allow notifications.
So that's based upon people that engage with the prompt. So saying like decline or accept or something like that.
Okay.
Not necessarily of the overarching traffic to it, because you have to take into account, if there's a browser that does not yet support web push or anything of that
Yeah.
sort, they're in a view that doesn't do that. And also, depending on how you're showing the prompts, make a difference. That's one of those kind of like best practice type things too. Is people ask like, when should you show the opt-in prompt? On the one side, on a business perspective, showing the opt-in prompt on page load, I mean, I hate to say it, but it gets you the best number of subscribers, the highest quantity of subscribers. It tends to back out time and time again on every single property we've pretty much had on the entire platform. Some consumers don't like that as much. So when somebody's more brand conscious, they can do things like custom opt-in prompts to give incentives to subscribing, or on page scroll, page view, and all that. And all of those things obviously have a direct impact onto the opt-in rates of it.
Yeah.
I think on our dashboard, for instance, our opt-in rate is 98%. Why? Because we present it to you when you're about to send a test push. So obviously you're going to say yes to it. So there's this huge varying degree of what somebody can do to get the subscriber.
Can the opt-in, I know like the little notification bar will come up, but can you also integrate an opt-in to web push on a web form? So like somebody would sign up for a newsletter checkbox. I also want all web notifications too. Can the opt-in be different forms as well?
So you can trigger the opt-in request with a multitude of different ways, whether that's the ones automated I mentioned, or even on like a click. So if you put it in a form and
Yeah.
you say, hey, I want to subscribe to it, you can do it that way. Ultimately, the prompt itself is the same, which is meant to
Okay.
keep the consumers kind of educated. So you can't, change the look and feel of it or anything. It's based on the browser, which is still that, the site wants to show you notifications, do you allow type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like if someone's signing up for a newsletter, that thing should always pop up too, then probably, right? I mean, if they're already opting into a newsletter, have that push
Yeah.
notification opt in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it works great even before that, the steps before it, because of that barrier to entry. It
Yep.
just secures it, because it's so easy to segment too and say, hey, people that did not get to the completion page, find me all subscribers and use that group to get you people to finish out the forms.
Are you seeing more or an increase in opt-ins or that 20% number over the last 4 years, or has it sort of gone down, up? I'm just kind of curious what the trend is for consumers that are opting into web push.
Yeah, it's stabilized a little bit more, if we want to put it that way. It certainly had a bit of a decline since the early days,
Mhm.
but the early days, the education of what web push was, people didn't know what it was. I mean, I feel like honestly, maybe only in the past year or so did the general public start kind of understanding what web push was and seeing it on some of these larger sites, and seeing it across all the different kind of the internet as a whole. In there, the opt-in rates in the beginning it was pure Wild West. I mean, it was I think it was like upwards of 50% plus. People were just
Had
sure,
no
like
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, I don't know what this is,
Yeah.
yes or no. And I mean, it's almost like when it wants to take your location or use your microphone and things like that, people are like, yeah, well, I don't know what that means, but sure, why not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting. And what do you think the consumer sentiment is for it? Are they generally happy with it, or are brands abusing the push? And I'm just kind of what's it like right now for both of those things to
Yeah,
balance out?
it's an interesting one because there are certainly people which are abusing notifications. I mean,
Yeah.
there's companies out there which are they're just sending notifications that aren't relevant or just too much or whatever it is, and bombarding people or prompting them in certain sites which you don't really care for notifications that much on that particular site. So we're seeing that, and I think it's giving the industry a bit of a bad name. that's happening in there. But then there are other ones which I think is simply helping in it, and there's no problem with it. Again, like the example with the Black Friday, my wife was just asking like, hey, what sites do I need to subscribe to? Because I want to know when those sales go on. Like when that happens, I want to be the first to know.
Yeah.
If there's a price drop on lead gen world tickets, like I want to know to get that right away before it's too late. And I'm not looking at my email. Even there was the COVID vaccine announcements or the election announcements here in the U.S. I got pushes from news sites that basically showed that, which was awesome because I was halfway busy doing something else, and I was genuinely interested in that versus looking in my email, an hour or two later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering how it's all going to sort of continue to work. Obviously, I think web push is being proliferated across multiple websites. I mean, any website you go to these days, especially major ones, there's always that, allow for notification. So it's obviously working, right? I mean, when you
Yes.
see adoption, it's working. People, websites are getting benefit from it. At the same time, I wonder, how consumers will manage their subscriptions. So I assume you can go into the settings of your computer. Is that how you would you manage all the notification, just like you would your phone, your notification settings?
Yeah. And I think part of that, as we get the consumers more educated on how push works,
Yeah.
that any negative sentiments will just go away because people, if you don't want the push, they unsubscribe, you're done. You don't have to worry about it. You stay subscribed to those that you care about. And it is actually super simple. Again, lack of education, that's the problem here, but it's one click on, like if you're on a phone or a desktop, usually the padlock icon next to the URL, you click that and you can see the permissions you have. You can opt out, done,
Yep.
one click and you no longer have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, are you, if you don't mind, talking a little about push pros. You mentioned how they sort of focus on the monetization side of it a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I mean, it's pretty impressive what they've done in there too. Again, they've had the benefit of working with the Intel side for the technical aspects, so they don't have to worry about the nitty gritty, which a lot of providers do for handling the delivery of pushes, which has opened them up to create sort of recommendation engines, AIs, all these kind of things to really work on proper monetization for subscribers who have opted into sites to deliver content that they might be interested in. So they've got basically their wheelhouse where they then deliver what's most relevant, what drives the highest engagement for users on the various sites, whether it's a specific industry or vertical or whatnot. And then they work on a fully managed basis where they do everything for you. You basically just let them run it. You install the scripts, you let them go with it. You work with them occasionally if you want to send some individual pushes, and they give you a rev share basis and they cut you a check. That simple.
That
Make
sounds
money.
sounds good. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Push Pros has been really involved in performance marketing side of the world, at least at the conference and in the industry. So it's just interesting to hear how performance marketers or brands are using, their fully managed offering to increase revenue and opportunities for them. Yeah. So where do you see this sort of developing? Are all the browsers sort of up to speed, or is there still a lot of work on where they're sort of going? And what's sort of the projection looking forward with their development from a browser standpoint?
Yeah, it's interesting to see because the first browser that kind of brought the technology to life was the Safari on desktop, which obviously is Apple. Then fast forward, and then Chrome came out, Firefox came out, Opera came out, Edge came out. So pretty much all the major players came out and brought support for it on desktop or mobile. However, the one guy that was still missing after this 5-year stint here is iOS devices. Despite the fact that Apple was first on desktop, they have yet to bring the support on their iPhones. Whether you're using a Chrome browser or not, they don't bring support for it yet.
Hmm.
So no limitations on providers. It's just certainly the browsers that's doing that. There's a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of them bringing support because there's certain functionality which is required to get this and make this live and make it available. And if you want to really consider two main aspects, they did the one. They basically brought it out to life. So it's very optimistic that they could bring the second. The unique part that makes it a little bit of a challenge is that people that are part of this progressive web app movement, they're trying to remove the limitations that exist from apps to web. Of course, Apple has an incentive to keep some people on apps because of the App
Right.
Store.
Right.
And there's all these like court cases going and all that. But I think that's one of the bit of the holdups, because they can kind of hold you tight on there, even though Google's doing everything with apps. Apple's holding it a little bit on edge there. So we're optimistic that, they're going to bring full support for it. And I mean, it's going to be like another, explosion in the industry when we have basically double the volume coming from that end of it.
Well, so how does that? So how does that work from a double the volume? I mean, obviously, so if I have in terms of mobile device, if I have a CNN app on here, I'm going to get notifications from that CNN app or news notifications. If I'm also get notifications from their website, I'm guessing I would get similar notifications, but it may be notification overload too, right? Or I wonder how they would sync the notifications between the two. I'm guessing would it be difficult or no? I mean,
there's definitely a lot of ways that are going to be technically challenging for providers to be able to kind of do this. But
mhm.
there's a lot of underlying tech which also is coming out constantly, like Chrome release support for you to see related apps that are actually installed from the web, so I can know if you've installed this app or not. So at that point, I can either not ask you for push permissions to
Yeah.
exclude it in there, or again with like the example I gave you with your desktop and your phone, how we are able to connect the two. You can do the same with an app. I can say, hey, send this push, but I'm only going to target people that are on their phones or their desktops, or only on their apps. So it's definitely going to be the future, and there's definitely technical things which companies such as AIMSA will have to figure out, but
Mhm.
we're definitely going in that direction. And by the double the volume, more so saying because people that are on your iOS devices right now coming to the site, they see your site as normal. They simply just don't get the prompts. Where of course, if they start getting the prompts, now we're in a whole new ball game for that,
Got it. Got
from
it.
subscriber volume. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. Okay, I understand now. So there's that side of it. What about the Aimtel side of it, the development of the UI, the interaction, the services that you guys provide to your consumers? How are you guys sort of progressing on that? And is there anything that you can share, like where you see that sort of continuing to develop and move towards?
Yeah. Obviously, the industry's changed over these past 4 years. Our platform has changed over the past 4 years in terms of functionality, features, and all that kind of stuff that's built around it. Some of our focuses have always been around personalization and segmentation. So those are some of the ones that have constantly got most of the attention. So whether it's dynamically passing geolocation variables of subscribers to their devices or their names or whatever it may be.
Wait,
Um,
hold on a second. So just the geolocation side of it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So let's say you have, I don't know, we'll pick out a number, 100,000 people subscribed on the Lead Gen World site
Yep.
and they opted in. Not only can we make it very simple where you automatically can segment them off to say, hey, let's group California people because we want to do a specific promo around that.
Got it.
But also, let's say you're sending these 100,000 pushes over. Personalization increases click-through rate. That's always the case.
Yeah.
So you can very simply make it pass through the push and insert their state, their country, their geo, whatever it is, to say like, hey, is still interested in California, or like, hey, California promo special, whatever it is, to basically personalize those pushes, even if it goes out to hundreds of thousands or millions of people, so that they, have a higher tendency to click. So we make some of those just easier for the users, because the users, they don't have a quick way of always grabbing those geo variables on the site, and they don't have an easy way of passing it to the push through it. So we're making that simple for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just through the IP address, right? Obviously, just IP location.
Yeah. So we have partnerships with companies which basically help with a certain degree of accuracy translate IP addresses to
Yeah,
city, state, country, and all that, and then associate those with subscribers,
yeah,
so you can use those to personalize them.
yeah. I was just when you said geo, made me think about from a mobile aspect, right? When your mobile phone is, if you're walking into a Starbucks or if you're walking into certain locations, um, potentially triggering a notification or a discount or whatever it may be, if you're getting those types of things. But that's probably more on the mobile app side of things versus.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's another one which we're keeping an eye out for.
Yeah.
That support these geofencing kind of technology,
Yep.
that's been in a lot of the browsers specs for a while here, lingering around, that make
On
it
the mobile
possible.
browsers, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. On the mobile browsers, that make it possible for us to basically look into that. So that's not quite out into production or anything like that, but we do see that coming. I wholeheartedly expect to be able to do on a web notification the ability to geofence a certain region and then trigger a notification based upon that, whether entering or exiting it, and get a push from that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why that when you said that, it's sort of what I was thinking was, interesting how maybe push and geo fencing and all that sort of can kind of come into play with each other, and it seems like that would be really really powerful. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. So you
Yeah.
guys are continuing to expand on targeting based on the different parameters and information that you have now.
Yeah. So segmentation capabilities and personalization capabilities are some of the ones to be able to feed those through. And there's a lot of those different options already in the platform, as well as the automation capabilities. So being able to do this all cohesively together in one is really great. So that you can have, like I said, these clicks that go off based upon activities and then are personalized to the people in there. And they're also kind of working towards the integration side of it. So push has been unique in the sense of it's in its own silo since it's a push subscriber. I mean, even the biggest companies, and I think that's how we were able to also establish such a strong hold in the industry, is because there's no emails that are connected inherently to the push subscribers in here. There's no way user IDs that are kind of connected in there. So it makes it hard to integrate with a third-party CMS or whatever it is to send these pushes. So that's another world that we're kind of diving more into, is connecting with third parties to make it so that you can use whatever it is seamlessly with the Aimtel side of it. A lot of which can be done with our APIs already, but we want to make it, of course, as easy as possible for users.
So that was going to be my next question. It's actually two-part. I mean, implementation. Is it about just placing a code on the site and on launching it that way, or is it pretty easy? Or
It's basically two parts. So you put a JavaScript code on the site, like you would any kind of like analytics script tag or whatnot,
yeah,
and that's the easier part. The second part isn't hard, but this is when I said in the beginning, like the early adoption, because people aren't used to this. You have to upload a file to your website. So similar, like your robots.txt or like ads.txt, things like that. There's the one thing which is a service worker. And this is basically how we're able to deliver notifications when your phone is in your pocket or you're viewing a different website and you're not on the website anymore. So there's basically something that can run detached of your own site in there. Super straightforward. You just upload a file on the site and it's all said and done. But people weren't used to that. And now people are much more comfortable with it because they've seen it and they've understood it. I think even the developers on these larger, Fortune 500 companies have played with it themselves to the extent of they understand there's no negative impact on the site that can come from that if you're doing it, correctly through a legitimate company.
yeah. So you have that. So the implementation, and then with regards to the self-service aspect of Aimtel, going in there, are you building out campaigns? Is that something that they log into and they can sort of go through a flow and target? And tell me a little bit how that works on the. Obviously, we're not doing a demo here, but like I'm curious to know like how how user friendly it is to get in there and do it and implement
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So the whole platform was really designed against what people find familiar with the ESPs and all that. I remember there was a tool I used to use back in the day, and they're still around, Customer IO, and they were really good for email marketing and automation and all that kind of stuff. And other ones that we're all familiar with, like analytics, Google Analytics, and all that kind of stuff. So it was really designed to be a self-serve platform where you can go in, you can see the reporting, basically subscribers you've gained, notifications you've sent, conversions you've gotten, where you can view your subscriber lists. You can go granular into them and on an individual level, check data or whatever you want to see what can be used for segments. You can use tools to then go through a little UI builder to create those target audiences to say, hey, find people that are in California. They visited this page, but they never visited the registration completion page. It's been 2 weeks since they've been to the site. And you know what? They've spent $100 or more on my platform. So you can create that group, which is constantly updated in the background. We do it for you regardless, just dynamically in the background. And then you schedule a notification when you want it to go out. So you can say, you know what, Monday morning or, every Monday morning at 10 a.m., I want to send a push out to that audience, driving them to, complete the registration for Lead Gen World until the date that Lead Gen World is going, because I don't want this push to go out afterwards. So you
Right.
just kind of set it out and let it go. And then that's one kind of way that people do the notifications out of many other ways to do them.
And obviously, is pricing on a subscription basis or is it per message? How does that work?
Yeah. So it's priced based upon active push subscribers. So the people that hit allow and they basically are eligible to get it, we price them on that model. It's typically a dollar per thousand subscribers on how that goes through. And there's certain minimums if you're going on enterprise plans or not, which gets you other kind of like, customer success reps and onboarding specialists, all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But it uses that. And then you have the ability to, grow your subscribers or prune them. Like I said, with a segmentation, maybe you get people that are subscribing from a country for some reason that you have no interest into because they're, just not very valuable to you as your website and you don't want to pay for them. So you set some automation to purge them every day. So you don't get to pay for those subscribers that are there. Or, if they go inactive, we remove them from your account.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really intriguing, and I'm actually myself going to look into it and see how I can implement it on our website, because I think it's pretty clear that it's just an easy way to touch people, with a message, a quick message, an update, whatever it may be, a reminder, versus an email or anything else. We've been experimenting with text messaging and all that sort of stuff, but still requires somebody to do something a little bit beyond a quick click of a button, right? They've actually got to send a text message or something like that, which, it's just when we're all trying to make things as easy as possible to opt in, this seems to be one of the easiest ways to do that, is my point.
Oh yeah, and also kind of bridging on that too. There's always these compliance laws for it, which I mean,
Yeah.
usually it's on the provider to really make sure you're doing the right job or you're aware of it. But
Yep.
I mean, I remember way back when, before Intel started, I actually thought about going into the SMS industry. That was going to be the platform before web push was even there.
Yeah.
And the thing that scared me was some of the compliance. Those, the laws that if you're spamming people with a push that was unsolicited, I don't know if it's changed at the time. It's been a while since I've been there, but I think it was $16,000 per text message
Or text.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, I blew my mind of going down that road. Again, push, the subscriber has to allow it. I can't do it. You can't do it on their behalf. They have to do it, and they can decide if they want out at any time. So we don't have those hurdles to hit, and it makes it a lot easier for everybody to be comfortable with it, whether you're sending it or we're the provider or the recipient of the notification. So it's certainly good.
Yeah, my guess there's not a lot of error too in the process, right? It's either like, if I have a text message, or somebody's phone number, that could easily get put into a campaign that's not opt-in, right?
Yeah.
Mistake can happen, but I'm guessing it's almost impossible to somehow insert somebody into a push program that didn't opt in.
Yeah, you can't. And we get that question all the time too. We say, hey, we've got these subscribers of this domain, but we're going to use another domain. Like, can we just transfer them over? Like, trust us, we own the domain. And you can't do that because, I mean, could you imagine if you subscribe to like CNN.com and all of a sudden start getting pushes from like a completely different property,
Yeah.
and you would just be baffled on what happened. So you don't have that. Nor the text messages are also personally identifiable information. These people are hounded down these days. The CCPA laws, the GDPR laws, all that stuff. Push, you don't have to worry. It's all anonymous, but inherently. So you're already
Yeah.
covered on that entire basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good stuff, DJ. It was awesome to talk with you and hear about everything that you guys got going on over there at Aimtel and Push Pros. Really excited to actually have the Push Pros team. I know a lot of them are going to be out at Lead Generation World in Orlando in January, so excited about that. But just kind of hearing about what's these new tactics, new techniques to continue to touch your consumers and people that are coming to your website. So I appreciate you sharing it all with us. If they want to find out more, obviously just going to aimtel.com would probably be appropriate, right?
Yeah. Go to aimtel.com. You guys can check out the self-serve platform of it, obviously on our site or even on the Push Pro site, because you'll be able to jump between the two pretty easily if you're looking for the fully managed one. And I mean, there's a reason why we've been able to attract these large companies for it, because push works, like you said. I mean, It's the most cost-effective remarketing channel out there, bar none. And the Push Pro guys too, they know how to monetize it. So I mean, it's taken them years to really nail this down. So it's a lot easier to depend on the pros, whether it's on the self-serve or on that side too, to do it for you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, DJ. I appreciate it. And I look forward to watching the company grow and watching the development of this and how it continues to evolve. So thanks for joining me today.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Good chatting with you.